In this section, we're going to learn how to test services. Specifically, we're going to learn how to test very simple services. So we're going to start by looking at testing the calendar helper. The reason we're going to start with this one is, as you can see, it has no dependencies. So we don't need to worry about mocking anything. Instead, it just returns back an object with a couple of functions, and each of those functions takes in some parameters and returns a value. That's going to make this very easy to test. Now really, we're just going to use this as a way to get warmed up and see the very basics of testing services so that we can be comfortable when it comes time to test more complex services. Because of that, we're not going to test both of these functions extensively. Instead, I'd just like to test the getMonthName function, and I'm just going to write one simple test for that function. So you can see I've already got the spec created for it. So I'm going to just write one simple test. I'm going to write a test that verifies that when we pass in a 0, January is returned. Now, if you'll remember when we were testing our controllers, in the before each function we called the inject function. That gave us the controller constructor and the root scope. Inject is a way to ask Angular to give you services. So when we're testing services, we use the inject function to get the service so that we can test it. So I'm going to call inject here, and then inside that pass in a function. And the parameter I'm going to give that function is the service that I want to test. So in this case, it's calendar helper. Now this looks a little different than the test that we wrote for the controller, and probably any other Jasmine test you may have written, because instead of just passing a function into it, we pass the inject. But the net result is the same. The test still works just fine, but this allows us to get a calendar helper that's constructed by Angular. So now that I've got that calendar helper, I can write my expectation. Now one more thing I need to do before I can run this that we learned about when we were testing controllers is I need to invoke the module that has this service inside of it. And the way that I do that is a before each function, where I call the module function and give it the name of my module. And now you can see that as soon as I saved it, it ran the tests and executed my new test, and that one passed as well.